Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology, and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
You know, I've seen a rather interesting phenomenon develop when it comes to Hollywood movies, especially in the last 12 years or 13, 14, 15 years maybe. I guess you and I have had fun at Hollywood's expense in this recent period, Steve. But it's what I would call these big Hollywood films, franchise films, whatever, that get like really stellar ratings, really well reviewed. They get a lot of box office. You know, arguably, from the studio's perspective, a complete success. And then yet when you actually sit down and watch them, they're really average. Like, not like you can poke holes straight through them. They're not like, it's not that like technically they're not well made. Like, obviously it's really bizarre. Like, all the performances are there, the shots are there, all that stuff is there. But when you actually sit there and look at it, you go, it really isn't as good as what everyone's saying it is. And then you got to wonder where like these reviewers are coming from and whatever kickbacks they're getting. But
you're not suggesting it's Hollywood marketing.
No, I wouldn't ever suggest that. A classic example of this, I think, probably one of the first really big ones, I mean, that started this trend, I thought, was the Star Wars Force Awakens film from 2015, which 94%, I think, on Rotten Tomatoes, I think, reviews through the roof, gargantuan box office. And it's really just a poor photocopy of A New Hope, the first Star Wars film back in 1977. So you sit there and you think, well, why is it getting these ratings? Why is it getting this success? So with that in mind, and I know there's plenty of other examples we could poke a stick at here, but the most recent one that I think falls into this category is the new Batman film that's got Robert Pattinson in it. Not to dish Robert Pattinson, you almost forget he's in the film because I think he's only got his cowl off for 3 scenes and the rest of the time he's in the suit, so you don't even know that he's in it half the time. But I think the thing that really I really found odd after watching it is not only it's 3 hours of it that you got to sit there and watch it, which for this type of film, I'm not sure why. But again, a bit like that Star Wars example I used before, it's, got an 85% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, a lot of great reviews. It's making stellar box office. So again, a winner for the studio. It's essentially copied the plot of Seven, and it has bolted on some sequences from the Christian Bale movies. And you sit there and you think, it's all well put together, but why am I watching this? What is it bringing to the table? And I just find that, why are these films being regarded so highly critically when they're actually not that good? Or is it just the nostalgia factor, which, if it is, then that's just disturbing to me, because then we're not going to get anything that's new or fresh or anything.
I don't know. I mean, I've not seen the film, but I know exactly what you're talking about, Ben. And, perhaps it's one of the better films this year, this month. I don't one of the better Batman films of the last 3. I don't know how they rate these things. I mean, it is obviously part of the Hollywood machine, but I'm losing hope for the entire film industry when I watch these regurgitations of films that we've seen before, and they're almost played back identically, just with some new effects and new trappings. So it's quite disappointing.
And I don't really see any reason for it either, although I guess from the studio perspective, it's made a buttload of money, so what does it matter to them? They got what they wanted out of it. And I believe the saying goes, is my favorite film is the one that turns a profit. So from that perspective, it's successful. But just critically, from an artistic point of view, there wasn't any reason why they couldn't have done something more original, because Batman is such an established property that you're like me, I'll go and watch it because it's probably my favorite of the comic book heroes out of all of them because of who he is and the legacy, etc. So they didn't need to do this kind of copy and paste job that they did in this film, and that's where, we've spoken a lot about being disengaged with Hollywood, and especially from our background and what was interesting to us. But this is a clear example, like why I have no interest in going to the cinema anymore, because why am I paying $25 to watch this?
Well, that's very sad to hear, Ben, but perhaps that's the way a lot of Hollywood's going, and why we consume so much content at home now.
Absolutely. And yeah, for all the talk that, those sort of dodgy Netflix films that, are sort of throwaways that you can forget in a day, at least you don't have to go outside and spend extra outside of your subscription fee to actually watch them, because they're all available there. And you may turn out a gem every now and then, if that's the case. So yeah, let's move on to something a bit more positive. Maybe some filmmaking actually got me inspired to potentially make some more films, because I could do it all at home using the software. But the Unreal Engine 5 stuff, I've been watching some more demos, sort of geared towards more gaming, etc. But you can make linear films using the software. But the one thing I wanted to add to this conversation is that I didn't notice before is that apparently it's free to use, and you only have to chip in once your project goes over $1 million in revenue, and you have to send a royalty fee to Epic Games for the trouble, which I actually think that's actually a really encouraging model if it works for them, obviously, because it means that anyone can download the software and actually get into it, which is what contrasting our previous topic, I was like, oh, actually that might actually get me into doing some stuff.
Yeah, I certainly had a look straight away, and was quite interested in doing some of the courses that are available. I think when you see what's capable with the engine, I mean, obviously I think you'll need more than just a 6-week course, but I think that's where it starts. And having a look at the control suite there, it's very familiar to people like yourself and myself, Ben, who have used editors and a variety of creative tools. So it's nothing new, but it is new in terms of its the next dimension.
Absolutely. And even just, I mean, obviously, creating, shots and all of that takes lots of time, lots of effort to sort of get it right. But I think with that learning curve, it could potentially be a really interesting exercise to get into, even if you punched out a couple of shorts or something. And you could do it all at home because, I guess if you feel comfortable with your voice acting talent, you could probably voice everything in there too.
Oh, look, absolutely. The fact that you can create worlds and, you can create films within these worlds or games within these worlds just, I think for me, I guess, sometimes when we say, well, what more could you want than, a Silicon Mac? And you realise the sort of power they're putting in the back end. It's to run, simulations like this, real time, real world game and film. I mean, it's awesome, and I'm actually quite excited by it. So I think I might check it out.
Absolutely. I guess it'll give you or any one of us a reason to spend $6,000 on a MacBook Pro now. Alrighty. So let's move on. We'll change topic completely here, and we've got the Australian federal election coming up. The starting gun was fired, proverbially speaking, the other week. We had week one, and we're not going to, election campaigns are election campaigns. Politicians do their thing. They get their, vox pops happening and, their messages out, and they sledge each other, because one thinks they're more adept at it than the other. We won't sort of go into that too much, but I did want to just touch on the media coverage, and I was somewhat dismayed with what I saw, because I feel like I think there's been a long-standing commentary in many countries that the mainstream media has kind of lost the plot. But I feel like I saw, really good examples of it this week with what they were choosing to focus on. The Albo gaffe, or even, the Morrison forgetting or saying that his, ex cabinet minister was still in cabinet. instead of focusing on what are these guys offering for the country for the next 3 years. And it was like piranhas going after, the fresh meat that, they got the clickbait headline and were doing, I guess, like a sort of a social media type reaction as opposed to what they're supposed to be doing, which is real journalism, reporting exactly what is supposed to be going on. And the thing that concerned me the most was that they seem to be doubling down on this behavior instead of, moving on or doing whatever. I think these people actually think that they're onto something and that they're actually doing their job. And that's the bit that I won't, like I said, I won't go, but like before we got on, well, won't go too dark down this rabbit hole, but I just feel very concerned about how all of this is meant to work when you're talking about the public square and getting ideas out, how they reported. It just doesn't look good, as a whole mechanism going forward.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think the socialification of like the coverage is exactly what it is, as you said there. That they're no longer reporting; they're treating them as personal posts. And we know how the cycle works. You post a gaffe, and then it's all about the responses to the gaffe, and then you talk about and have an opinion about those responses to the gaffe. And if the gaffe was meaningless, which it's embarrassing. It's probably not a good look, but is it the end of the world? I don't know anymore. But you can very quickly make it up in your own mind to be the end of the world in your little echo chamber. And I think that's precisely what we saw. And I think to me, it just looked like nerves. Yeah, like you, I don't want to go into this too much. To me, it just looked like nerves, bit of rabbit in the headlights sort of moment, and really bad gaff. But it didn't. I can't see how it can be critical. It wasn't anything other than just a gotcha moment that the press got so delighted with their own ingenuity. I don't know, what else can you say? Like, then they just posted it 1,000 times and kept on speaking about it. I guess there is a funny side to that, but I don't know what it's got to do with politics or the election.
Yeah, and exactly. I mean, it was at best a one-day story. It's not like something that you keep banging on about for 3 or 4 days, thinking that you've, I don't know, rediscovered journalism as a result of it.
Exactly. It certainly wasn't hard-hitting political journalism that revealed anything that we didn't already know.
I did have to laugh though about the Adam Bant response where he just told the journalist to go Google it. I mean, that's kind of the ultimate response in this day and age to this sort of stuff. And probably
that's right.
And probably Albo was kicking himself that he didn't think of that. Although I can't imagine him saying that. But anyway, I guess just sticking with the world, like broadening out the world topics in general. Obviously, inflation and the economy, like potential recession risks, etc., are still happening in the world. Inflation is also a factor here. A big reason why the fuel excise was cut recently was, apart from the sort of Ukraine issues causing issues with fuel prices, there was also, like a perception of cost of living, increases and that sort of thing. And then, there's also this talk about rising interest rates going throughout the course of this year in Australia. And then you look abroad, and then there's the lockdowns that are happening in China that could potentially be disrupting supply chains. Oh, here we go. It's all rabbit hole stuff again. We're going to end up in a dark place because it seems like the world is in this really interesting, volatile, do you want to call it? I don't know. Place where there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of I guess you take for granted like some of the stability that we've had in some of the most recent decades, and it seems like there's a little bit of the cart got knocked around a bit, and we're all COVID and all sorts of other stuff, and it's still continuing to be an issue. And some of this economic stuff might actually start to bite now that the world seems to be moving on from COVID, so to speak.
I think the world's moving on from everything, from the GFC, from COVID, and from everything that's happening at the moment. I mean, it is interesting, and just going back to the last story where we spoke about the Albo gotcha moment, I think this is, once again, it's a social media sort of thing. Probably for the first time, we are in a really volatile and unpredictable sort of phase, probably of the decade, maybe of the century so far. And we don't know what's going to happen yet. Next. And I don't think anyone really can predict this. We couldn't have predicted COVID. We couldn't have probably predicted even the war we're seeing in Ukraine. And a lot of the changes that have come about in the last 5 years, I don't think anyone could have predicted either. And so now we're sort of making stuff up in our head. Someone says inflation, and you can see inflation going through the roof, but we just keep churning it over and over. And then, obviously there's global conflict, and then there's, all sorts of additional things, COVID in the mix. Next thing it'll be a Trump running again sort of agenda, and these things will probably stir the volatility even more. So it's it's a troubling time, because the one thing the human mind doesn't like is uncertainty, and we're going through a big period of uncertainty.
Absolutely. I guess just one final thought, and we didn't get to it this week. Maybe we'll get to it next week if it's still going. But maybe Elon Musk will save the day when he buys Twitter and establishes the public square. I thought that was a rather amusing story that we can discuss another time, obviously in more detail.
As long as it's Elon's truth, I guess it's good enough for the rest of us.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. So thanks for joining us today for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. You can read and watch more of our topics dealing with science, technology, and culture. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. And we hope you enjoy the website, and you can like and subscribe to us there. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.